What just happened in India has left the world stunned, and even America, the most powerful nation on Earth, didn't see it coming. For decades, global politics has been shaped by the same handful of superpowers. Smaller nations either followed their lead or paid the price for resisting. But now, India, the world's largest democracy, the fastest growing economy, and a nation of 1.4 billion people, has just done what no other country dared to attempt. And the shockwaves are being felt in Washington, Beijing, Moscow, and beyond. India's rise on the global stage has been steady but unstoppable. Once dismissed as merely a developing nation, India has transformed into a powerhouse of technology, defense, and diplomacy. Its space program is breaking barriers, its economy is outpacing rivals, and its military presence is expanding across the Indo-Pacific. Yet, what makes this moment historic is not just growth or ambition. It has the courage to defy expectations and make a bold move that the rest of the world has been too afraid to take. Why is this such a big deal? Because for the first time in recent history, a nation outside the traditional Western bloc has challenged the global order without backing down. This isn't just about India making headlines. It's about India rewriting the rules of the game. And while America is watching with shock, the world is watching with curiosity, admiration, and in some cases, fear. In this video, we're going to uncover exactly what India just did, why it matters, and how it changes the future of geopolitics. We'll look at how this single decision could alter alliances, disrupt economies, and put India in a position of influence that rivals the very superpowers that once overshadowed it. Stay with us, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why many are now saying, India isn't global context before India's move for years. The balance of global power has been delicately maintained by a handful of nations, the United States, China, Russia, and the European Union. Each of these powers has pursued its own agenda, often clashing with one another while expecting smaller nations to quietly fall in line. The U.S. has long used its economic and military influence to keep allies aligned with its vision. China has pushed its Belt and Road Initiative, buying loyalty through infrastructure and debt. Russia has relied on its vast energy reserves and military strength to carve out its sphere of influence. Meanwhile, Europe has positioned itself as the guardian of liberal values, though often dependent on U.S. leadership. Yet, despite their power, when it came to addressing the most contentious issues of our time, whether it be global trade conflicts, energy security, or the shifting balance in the Indo-Pacific, most nations hesitated to act boldly. Fear of economic retaliation, sanctions, or diplomatic isolation kept even large countries cautious. The idea of defying Washington or Beijing seemed unthinkable. Smaller nations especially worried about being crushed between competing giants, and that's where India found a unique opening. Unlike most nations, India has the size, the economy, and the military power to stand on its own. It is not easily bullied, nor is it willing to become anyone's pawn. This vacuum, where others hesitated, delayed, or compromised, was waiting for someone brave enough to step in, and India just did. By daring to take action where others stayed silent, New Delhi didn't just fill a gap, it shifted the global conversation entirely. The bold move India just made, so what exactly did India do that has the entire world talking? India made the bold decision to reject Western pressure on its strategic partnerships with Russia and instead doubled down on building its own independent global strategy, while simultaneously launching initiatives that assert its leadership in space energy and the Indo-Pacific. Let's break this down. For months, the U.S. and its allies urged India to distance itself from Moscow, especially in the wake of global tensions. But instead of yielding, India struck long-term energy and defense deals with Russia, ensuring secure access to oil, gas, and military hardware at favorable prices. This wasn't just a trade decision, it was a declaration that India will not be dictated to, even by the world's most powerful nations. At the same time, India unveiled its ambitious plan to launch a permanent space station by the early 2030s. This announcement, timed just after its successful moon and sun missions, stunned observers who expected India to remain a junior player in space. By committing to building its own orbital hub, India signaled that it is not content to merely participate in space exploration. It is aiming to lead. On the maritime front, India expanded its naval presence in the Indian Ocean, announcing joint exercises and new bases that cement its dominance over one of the world's most strategic waterways. Symbolically, this was as bold as it gets. India is telling both Washington and Beijing that it is the decisive force in the Indo-Pacific, not a secondary player. What makes this move unprecedented is its multi-front nature. This wasn't one decision, it was a package of actions designed to broadcast India's new global posture, self-reliant, assertive, and unapologetically independent. For decades, nations have tiptoed around superpowers, fearful of the consequences. But India just made it clear it is ready to set its own terms, and the rest of the world will have to adjust. Why even America is shocked for Washington, India's defiance came as a surprise, and perhaps even a wake-up call. The U.S. has long counted on India as a partner in balancing China's rise. American officials assumed that, when push came to shove, New Delhi would align with Western interests. But India's actions proved otherwise. It will cooperate with the U.S. when interests overlap, but it will never be pressured into sacrificing its independence. Historically, the U.S. has wielded immense influence over its allies. Whether through military aid, economic ties, or diplomatic leverage, most nations adjusted their policies to stay in America's good graces. But India is not like other countries. It doesn't rely on U.S. protection, nor does it see itself as subordinate to Western leadership. The shock in Washington stems from this very fact. America expected loyalty, but India delivered autonomy. By securing oil deals with Russia, launching its own space agenda, and asserting military control over the Indian Ocean, India reminded the world that it cannot be boxed into anyone's camp. This independence forces the U.S. to rethink its strategy. Instead of treating India as a junior partner, Washington must now recognize New Delhi as an equal player with its own vision for the world order. This is the essence of why America is shocked, not because India acted, but because India acted fearlessly. The strongest superpower in the world has realized that its influence is no longer absolute. A new power dynamic is emerging, and India is at the center of it. Geopolitical repercussions. India's bold move is already reshaping global alliances in ways that few anticipated. By standing firm with Russia while maintaining strong ties with the U.S., India has positioned itself as a rare bridge between East and West. This flexibility gives New Delhi extraordinary leverage, something neither Washington nor Moscow can ignore. China, for instance, is watching nervously. India's assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific directly challenges Beijing's ambitions for dominance. While China hoped to isolate India, the opposite is happening. Nations like Japan, Australia, and Vietnam are rallying behind India's leadership in securing the region. Russia, on the other hand, sees India as a reliable partner in an uncertain world. With Western markets closing off, Moscow depends heavily on India's vast consumer base and willingness to buy discounted energy. This strengthens the Russia-India partnership in ways that Washington can't easily counter. The European Union faces a dilemma. On one hand, it values India as a democratic partner against authoritarian regimes. On the other, Europe is uneasy with India's closeness to Russia. This tension means Europe must now decide whether to embrace India's independence or risk alienating one of the fastest-growing economies on Earth. Meanwhile, nations in the Middle East and Africa are welcoming India's rise. Tired of choosing between Washington and Beijing, they see New Delhi as a model for pursuing independent foreign policy while still commanding respect on the world stage. India's outreach to African nations through trade, infrastructure, and technology only strengthens this perception. The broader consequence is clear. India has emerged as a trendsetter in the global south. By refusing to bow to pressure, it has shown other developing nations that there is another path, one where sovereignty, independence, and strategic courage take precedence over fear of backlash. The world is recalibrating. Superpowers are adjusting their strategies. And at the center of this shifting landscape stands India, not as a follower, but as a leader charting its own course. Used rising, India has arrived. Economic shockwaves. India's bold decision is not just political, it is sending ripples through the global economy. By securing long-term energy and defense deals with Russia at discounted prices, India has effectively shielded itself from the kind of inflation and supply shocks that have rattled Europe and the US. This has immediate benefits. Cheaper energy strengthens India's industries, lowers costs for consumers, and fuels the country's already rapid economic growth. But the shock doesn't end there. Global investors are paying close attention. Multinational corporations that once saw India as merely a secondary market now realize it is becoming a primary hub of growth. By refusing to bend under Western pressure, India has proven it can navigate complex global crises while protecting its national interests, a quality investors prize. Tech giants, automakers, and defense contractors are reassessing their long-term strategies, with many doubling down on India as a safer, more stable alternative to China. This move could also accelerate an economic realignment away from U.S. dominance. For decades, the dollar has been the unquestioned king of global trade. But India's willingness to pay for Russian energy in alternative currencies challenges that monopoly. If more nations follow India's lead, the world could inch toward a multi-currency system, reducing American leverage over international markets. The shockwaves are unmistakable. What started as a national decision in New Delhi has turned into a global financial tremor. For India, it is more than just short-term savings. It is about rewriting the rules of global commerce in a way that places New Delhi at the heart of the world economy. Strategic and military dimensions. India's assertive stance also carries major military implications. By strengthening ties with Russia while simultaneously expanding defense cooperation with Israel, France, and the United States, India has diversified its military partnerships in a way few countries can match. This ensures that India is not dependent on a single power for its security, making it resilient in the face of global tensions. The credibility of India's armed forces has grown significantly. Joint naval drills in the Indian Ocean, the commissioning of new aircraft carriers, and the modernization of missile defense systems send a clear message. India is not merely defending its borders, it is shaping the security environment of the entire Indo-Pacific. At a time when China is aggressively expanding its naval presence, India's military posture signals that the region will not be dominated by Beijing alone. This decision also demonstrates India's willingness to stand up to superpowers. By openly pursuing its own defense strategy, even when it runs counter to U.S. preferences, India is proving it will not allow external powers to dictate its security policies. In the long term, this may establish India as a security provider not just for itself, but for smaller nations in South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Africa that look to New Delhi as a counterbalance to both China and Western hegemony. The implications stretch far beyond today. In the decades to come, India's assertive military strategy could transform the Indo-Pacific into a multipolar arena, one where New Delhi's presence ensures balance, stability, and independence from domination by any single superpower. India's vision for the future. What makes India's bold move even more significant is that it is not an isolated event. It is part of a much bigger vision. India sees itself not just as a regional power, but as a global leader with a mission to guide the world into a more balanced, multipolar order. Economically, India is positioning itself as a hub of manufacturing, innovation, and digital technology. With massive solar projects, a push for green energy, and a booming tech sector, New Delhi aims to lead the transition into a sustainable future. In space, India is no longer satisfied with being a latecomer. Its upcoming space station, moon missions, and interplanetary ambitions show a nation determined to stand shoulder to shoulder with NASA, Roscosmos, and SpaceX. At the heart of this vision lies the idea of India as a Vishwaguru, a world teacher. The concept isn't about domination, but about guidance, offering an alternative to the binary choices of East versus West. By combining economic strength, technological progress, and cultural influence, India seeks to project soft power alongside hard power, shaping a future where sovereignty and cooperation go hand in hand. This latest move, a bold, independent, and unapologetic, fits perfectly into that narrative. It's not just about today's headlines, but about building a tomorrow where India is respected as both a powerful nation and a moral compass for the world. Challenges and risks ahead, of course. Boldness comes with risks. By rejecting Western pressure and charting its own course, India could face significant backlash from the US and its allies. Sanctions, trade restrictions, or a slowdown in Western investment are real possibilities. Washington has never been shy about punishing nations that defy its wishes, and India knows it is playing with fire. There are also economic risks. While India's partnerships with Russia provide short-term gains, they could expose the country to instability if global energy prices fluctuate or if Moscow faces deeper crises. In addition, over-reliance on discounted energy could slow India's push for renewables. Internally, India must overcome its own obstacles, bureaucratic inefficiencies, infrastructure bottlenecks, and persistent inequality. A bold foreign policy is only as strong as the domestic foundation that supports it. If growth slows or internal divisions deepen, India's ability to sustain its independent path could weaken. Yet perhaps the greatest challenge is time. Can India maintain this delicate balance of defiance and diplomacy long enough to transform the global order? Or will pressure from powerful rivals force it to compromise? These are the uncertainties. Bold gamble. The world reacts. The international response to India's move has been nothing short of dramatic. Global media outlets have splashed headlines ranging from admiration to alarm. Western newspapers warn of a new era of defiance, while Asian and African outlets praise India's courage in refusing to bow to superpower dominance. In the global south, India's move is being hailed as inspirational. Leaders in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America see New Delhi as a role model, a nation that has proven it is possible to stand tall against pressure and still thrive. Some even argue that India's decision marks the beginning of a new wave of independence for developing nations tired of being caught in the crossfire of US-China rivalry. But not everyone is celebrating. In Washington, policymakers are scrambling to reassess strategy, torn between frustration and recognition of India's importance. In Europe, reactions are mixed. Some leaders respect India's independence, while others view it as a betrayal of Western solidarity. China, meanwhile, is nervous. India's expanding influence in the Indo-Pacific directly undermines Beijing's ambitions, making New Delhi its most formidable obstacle. Among ordinary people, the reaction is equally telling. Social media is flooded with debates. Some praise India for being fearless, others warn of dangerous consequences. In the US and Europe, many citizens are surprised that a country outside the Western Bloc could so confidently challenge the global order. What's clear is that India has shaken the world. Whether admired or criticized, New Delhi can no longer be ignored. Conclusion and final thoughts. So, what does all of this mean? India has just made a move that no other country dared, and in doing so, it has shocked even the United States. By standing firm on its partnerships, asserting its influence in space and the Indo-Pacific, and refusing to bow to pressure, India has signaled a historic turning point. This is more than just a bold act. It is a declaration that India is no longer content to be a supporting character in global affairs. It is stepping into the role of a shaper of the world order. For America, the shock is real. For China, the challenge is serious. For the rest of the world, the message is clear. India has arrived. We are witnessing history in real time. Future generations may look back on this moment as the day India cemented its place among the great powers. Whether this gamble pays off will depend on how India manages the risks ahead. But one thing is certain, the era of India as a silent observer is over. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think India made the right move? Will this decision strengthen its future, or will it create more challenges than opportunities? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because this conversation is just beginning.